All right, so today I have the privilege of talking with you wonderful people about the WDA Leadership Institute. And before we talk about what the Leadership Institute is, I want to think with you for a moment about why do something called a Leadership Institute. Well, as we have gone all over the world talking about discipleship and the need for maturity and for people who think, feel, and act like Jesus, one of the things that we've realized is that we do have a crisis of maturity in the church, and we have a crisis of leadership in the church. The thing that the church needs is effective leaders. And we've seen all over the world ineffective leaders, narcissistic leaders, compromised leaders, burnt out leaders, and we need effective leaders who can stay with the task for the long haul. Some of you had the privilege of growing up in churches where you had a pastor that stayed in that church for 20, 30, 40, or even 50 years. And you know the blessing of having a leader that goes through many phases of their life and stays with it in leadership and leads in a healthy way. But the problem is leaders that are in the church today lack a vision for developing leaders locally. When we're in a ministry or a church leadership environment and we have people growing in their faith and we're discipling them, they're going out on mission trips and they're saying, what's next? We don't have a vision for how we can raise them up as leaders in the local church. So what do? We send them to Bible school, we send them to seminary. And I don't know how many of you have been to seminary, but when I was in seminary, many of the people that were there came to seminary first because they wanted a deeper relationship with God. And secondly, while they were in seminary, many of them developed a heart for academic teaching, and they didn't go back to the local church and become pastors and leaders. They actually stayed in the seminary and became professors, teachers, theologians. And so one of the things that we've observed is seminaries and Bible schools are excellent at helping people develop theology, but not so great at helping people develop the character or the disciple building skills that are needed for Christian leadership in the local church, and I'll say also in the marketplace. We need leaders in every sphere of society, not just in the church. And we're not seeing seminaries in general producing the kind of Christ-like character we want to see in people. So what would it be like if we actually began as a church to develop leaders in our own context? And I want to think all the way back to our model for a minute. How did Jesus develop leaders? What was Jesus's approach to developing leaders? In WDA, we talk about this amazing thing called RCAPS. And if you want to just do this with me, I've started doing these little hand motions. So if you can show me your hands, we're going to do some hand motions together. So the first thing that Jesus did is he built relationships. So give yourself a big hug. He built relationships. And he did that in small groups. All right. The second thing that Jesus did is he gave content. So open your book and let's see your content. There's the content. And he gave content that was appropriate for the phase of development that the disciples were in. The next thing that Jesus did is he held his disciples accountable for application. So go ahead and grab that truth and bring it into your heart. You're being held accountable to not just know the truth, but to do the truth. The fourth thing he did is Jesus prayed. He interceded for his disciples in prayer. Let's see your pray hands. There you go. And the last thing that he did is he put disciples in situations. Let's see those situations. Pretend this is the earth, maybe, and everything on earth is a situation for growth. And he gave them structures and situations in which they could grow. So again, he built relationships. Give yourself a hug. He gave them content, good. He held them accountable, he prayed for them, and he put them in growth situations. We like to say at WDA, RCAPS was his secret sauce. You guys remember the Big Mac with the secret sauce? Jesus used RCAPS as his secret sauce. And if you want to see the whole RCAPS grid, here it is. We have RCAPS there on the column, and up here on the top row we have 5 phases. And if you've never heard about these phases, there's a great book called Disciple Building, a Biblical Framework that you can get on our website, disciplebuilding.org, and you can learn about the 5 phases. Phase 1 is evangelism, establishing faith. Phase 2 is laying foundations. Who is God? Who am I? And how do I relate to God? Phase 3 is equipping for ministry, learning to share our faith, learning our identity in Christ, healthy relationships, spiritual warfare. And these last 2 phases are what we're focusing on in the Leadership Institute. There's 2 parts to each phase. Phase 4A is appointing new leaders, and phase 4B is focusing on eternal things. We call this developing new leaders 1, developing new leaders 2. Phase 5 also has 2 parts. Part A is delegating new responsibilities. We call that developing mature leaders 1, and phase 5B is casting a world vision. We call that developing mature leaders 2. Now these 4 mini phases in phase 4 and 5 is what constitutes the Leadership Institute. The very interesting thing that you'll see is that when we develop phase 4 and 5 leaders, actually every other phase is covered by our students. And I'll show you how that multiplication works in just a moment. Phase 4A, developing new leaders 1, that's where we encourage people to enter the Leadership Institute. That is 50 lessons. Now you can do that in a number of ways. The ideal way is to do a weekly small group study for 50 weeks. And after a year, you'll have developing new leaders. Now that's more than just a 14-week course. That is a big commitment. But I would argue that when Jesus appointed the 12 and said, I'm calling you apostles, and he named them in Mark 3 and Luke 6, and said, I'm going to send you out to drive out demons and to share the gospel of the kingdom, to preach. That's a big job. And so it makes sense that there's a big commitment for young leaders learning and growing in this phase. So one way to do it is through a weekly small group. Another way to do it is through monthly meetups where you cover several lessons at a time, and then you go out to do your assignments each month. But there are 50 lessons that need to be covered. Phase 4B is 48 lessons if you include processing pain, which is not technically part of the Phase 4B course, but it is something we want people to do before starting Phase 4B. At some point, you should go through processing pain. And then there's another, I think, 34 lessons on top of that. Phase 5A, which is a group that I'll be starting in May, is 42 lessons. And that's a very powerful set of materials. We've led that once during COVID, and this time will be even better. So even if you took it during COVID, I'd encourage you to take it again, especially our new staff. I highly encourage you to be part of that Phase 5A group. And Phase 5B is 30 lessons. Each of these courses has a certificate that you'll receive at the end if you complete it successfully. Here are some of the materials we cover in Developing New Leaders 1. The major output for a DNL 1 student is they should be able, at the end of that DNL course, they should be able to effectively lead a small group of disciples who are growing in their faith. They should be able to do one-on-one life coaching or mentoring with one other person. They should be able to understand Christ's method for growing phase 2 disciples, and we have a paper that they do about that. They should be able to do bold evangelistic outreach, and that's our final project, is we send them out 2 by 2 to do evangelistic outreaches, just like in Matthew 10. And it's kind of fun to see what happens when they take that challenge seriously. There's a number of relationships that you'll be involved in as a DNL1 student. Of course, there's mentors. We ask every student to have a mentor. The mentor could be the cohort leader, or it could be somebody else that they're meeting with separately. And then we have cohort leaders. We have cohort members there who are dancing with joy, I think. And then each cohort member or student has their own disciples. And so we got 4 sort of levels of relationship happening, and that provides the R in our caps, the support, as well as the S in our caps. A cohort is a small group of students in a hands-on learning or training environment. These are some of our cohort students that just graduated in Kenya. And like I said earlier, they're engaged in multiple levels of relationships simultaneously. This is how it looks pictorially. The cohort leaders and the course mentors are working together to help you develop. You're also being held accountable and encouraged by other cohort members, while all of you together are building disciples in your own ministry. I want to also just say that if you're a pastor or a Christian ministry leader, this actually is not an additional commitment on top of what you are doing in ministry. This is a way for you to do what you're already doing in a more structured and effective way. All of you in ministry have disciples, and you need tools for helping those disciples grow. So simply invite those disciples along on a phase 2 journey while you're learning in phase 4. Again, those capstone projects: lead a small group, write a discipleship strategy paper, do a personal growth project on yourself, life coach one other person, and conduct an evangelistic outreach. There's so many blessings outside of just your own learning and your disciples' learning. So many blessings of cohorts. One of the blessings that's very exciting is the evangelistic fruit. You guys didn't know that we're the Worldwide Evangelism Association, but we are, because as our students are growing in their faith and raising up other disciples and going out 2 by 2, we're seeing actually people are getting saved. We're seeing Muslims getting saved. We're seeing alcoholics and prostitutes getting saved. I've done a little number crunching, and I found that so far, this is early metrics, but every phase 4A student, on average, facilitates the conversion of 4.4 people to the kingdom. So they're winning 4.4 people to the kingdom. That's on average. There's not 0.4 of a person out there being saved, or half a salvation. It's on average 4.4, and they're all starting phase 2 groups, and so people are getting basic discipleship while those phase 4A leaders are going out, and 4.4 people are coming to Christ. Also, a number of those people are getting involved in discipleship groups after their conversion. In phase 4B, the cohorts that I have been leading, that number goes up to 5.5. So now there's 5.5 people coming to Christ through the disciple and their phase 3 group. Each disciple has 3 to 5 phase 3 students that they're working with and equipping. And those phase 3 students are going out with their cohort leader and doing evangelistic outreaches together. And they're actually sending back reports to the cohort leader saying this is what's happened on our evangelistic outreach. We require that every student going through those phase 3 School of Ministry groups be given the opportunity to share their testimony. And some of them haven't done that, but many of them have. And one of the encouraging reports I read this morning was from Gail in Nigeria. And Gail is the wife of Akeem, who's our Nigeria director. And she went out with 2 of her phase 3 students from the phase 3 group that she started as a phase 4B student. So they went out, the 3 of them, and they went to some Muslim areas and they started talking to some Muslims about the gospel. And those guys didn't give their lives to Christ, but they promised to think about it. And then they went to a school, and they again had a chance to share their testimonies and share the gospel. And again, nobody came to Christ, but everybody was thinking about it, and there was a relationship built. But then Gail said something amazing. She said, even though nobody has come to Christ yet, my 2 students in phase 3 had so much joy in getting to go out and fulfill the Great Commission and share the gospel with people. And we decided as a team that we need to do this on a monthly basis. So we're going to start doing this on a monthly basis. And I also realized personally that if I'm going to expect my disciples to do evangelistic outreach, it is important for me to do it with them. And me modeling evangelism is very critical for their growth. So Gail is learning and growing. The phase 3 students are learning and growing. And they're taking bold steps to share their faith, which is really the important part. The important part is not just that people give their lives to Christ, but it's that the phase 3 students are learning to share their faith as a lifestyle. And so that's really exciting. And that to me is a great success. But not only are people giving their lives to Christ and people are doing evangelism, but on average, 5.2 people per phase 4B student are enrolling in phase 1 groups. And those phase 1 groups are being led by phase 3 students. So this is one of the other great benefits and blessings of starting a cohort or being in a cohort, is you see an immediate delegation of leadership responsibilities. If you're in a ministry where you feel overwhelmed by the number of things you have to do and the people you have to follow up on, imagine being able to hand those responsibilities off immediately to students who are learning and growing in your environment. Hey, follow up on this person. Go visit this person. Go out and do evangelism. I don't have to be there every time. You'll see an incredible lightening of your load as your ministry is growing, and you're able to hand those responsibilities off. You'll also see church growth. We saw in Kenya, one of our students who did an evangelistic outreach and did a phase 2 group. He started talking about discipleship, and within 9 months, his church grew from 25 people to 150 people visiting on a Sunday morning. And again, it's not all about the size of the congregation. It's really all about discipleship. But the reason those people were attracted to his church was because he was preaching and teaching and doing discipleship. And they wanted to be part of a church where the pastor was actively engaged in discipling the members. Also, a result of him going out to a town called Makobich and sharing the gospel with a couple of alcoholic guys drinking their beer who gave their lives to Christ, and 3 prostitutes who gave their lives to Christ. A church has been planted and some land has been donated to start a church, and an amazing gospel movement has started in Makobich because one person did their homework. So church growth is one of those benefits. Another is increased buy-in from the people in your church. They're going to be excited about discipleship. Our church partner in Trinidad, Roger Boca, is part of a large, highly organized, and theologically, complex and powerful Pentecostal church in Trinidad. It's a big church, but he took his key leaders through DNL1, and he said, Nathan, it's nothing short of phenomenal. All of these students are starting phase 2 groups, and half the people aren't even part of our church. They're starting with coworkers. They're going to the senior citizen center. They're going to, with kids. They're doing it all over the community. And it's phenomenal how much they've bought in to discipleship as a lifestyle. And of course, new discipleship groups, new church plants, I talked about that, and greater community and support for existing leaders. If you've got leaders in your community that need some extra love and support, being part of a DNL group is one way that they can encourage each other, support each other. And the great thing is it's not all about just doing more work. It's about coming together every week, encouraging each other, praying for each other, sharing each other's burdens, helping with each other's ministries. So it's a great team building experience as well, for elder teams and staff teams and also business leaders and just moms and dads in leading in their homes. Every one of us has a sphere of influence, and we need effective skills for leading and sharing Christ in our environments. Upon graduation, you'll fill out an exit interview form. You'll go through a personal exit interview with your cohort leader. We'll just chat with you about how things have been going, the reading, some of the things you're taking away, what you're what you're thinking about next, and then you'll receive a certificate, which is some people care about that a lot. Some people don't care about that so much, having just a piece of paper, but we do provide that. And after you go through phase 4A and phase 4B, having led WDA groups for at least 1 year, you'll be given the chance to apply for a WDA associate staff position. So I have 16 people that I'll be interviewing this week that are graduating phase 4B. And I made an offer yesterday for one of our new leaders in Nigeria to join our staff team. And there are going to be others as well. So expect a large influx of new staff coming on WDA from around the world, but you can do this on campuses. You can do this in churches in the U.S. as well. And imagine how much our U.S. ministry could grow if we begin leading people through DNL 1 and 2 and inviting them to be part of our staff team. Here's some of the materials we use in DNL 2, spiritual tensions, the role of suffering, living by faith, and ministry principles 2. I think my two favorite books in WDA are now the role of suffering and living by faith together. Because you would think that the role of suffering would be a discouraging book, but it's actually an incredibly encouraging book. It helps leaders develop a worldview that embraces suffering as a part of Christian life and leadership, and see that as a pathway for intimacy with Christ and knowing God in a new way and experiencing His heart. And living by faith is an incredibly encouraging and empowering book as well. Here are some of the materials we'll be doing in phase 5A if you join my cohort starting in May. Spiritual maturity, again, is an incredibly powerful book. The church talks about church leadership and governance. We talk about some controversial issues, different worldviews, and ministry principles. And all of those really give you as a leader a high level of leadership skills and knowledge that help you lead what will be an increasing growing movement. And then developing mature leaders, we talk about the second coming of Christ, upper room discourse, and missions, God's global heart. So also we'll be doing that next year. Now, Jack Larson, if you know Jack, has a theory that he shared with us that I have found to be very true, which is that people tend to disciple 2 phases back, which means wherever you are on the RCAPs, on the phases of growth, the people that you're naturally attracted to discipling often are an indicator for where you are in the phases. Oftentimes when you get to phase 3, you have a natural impulse to develop phase 1 people through evangelism and basic follow-up. And that's one of the ways that you know that you're entering phase 3, is where you just want to share your faith with people. You want other people to know Christ and to experience some basic discipleship. Phase 4A tends to disciple phase 2 people. And phase 4B tends to disciple phase 3 people. Phase 5A is going to start developing a leadership team in phase 4A, and phase 5B is going to be helping those leaders walk through that John 6 crisis of faith in phase 4B and develop as maturing leaders. And so we're seeing this happen, and we've built it into our curriculum and approach that if you are going through one of these phases and want to graduate, you actually must do some discipleship 2 phases back. And so that's been an accountability structure that has really helped us increase our impact and also bring in some new staff and grow the caliber of our existing staff. Now, the cost for these experiences, each of these cohorts is $600, $600 US, for students in the US and Canada and Europe. We have prorated discounted prices in the developing world of $60 per student. If you're a staff person, you receive a 50% off discount, and you can make those payments by making a staff transfer into the Leadership Institute account or by contacting your cohort leader. If you are in the developing world, we have payment representatives set up in each country, and we simply give you a phone number. Please contact this person to make a payment. They keep track of all payments. They report back to us. These people have paid for their course. As soon as you make a qualifying payment, you'll be able to start the course. You'll receive PDF versions of the materials. If you'd like to order physical materials, you can do that at your own expense, but you'll receive those PDFs and you'll start your journey in whichever cohort you're registered for. If you need additional scholarships, or your students need an additional scholarship, we do have the ability to offer limited scholarships based on need and location. If your students are in a very rural part of Africa, for instance, we try to give those people an additional 50% off the list price so that they can afford to be part of it. On very rare occasions, we're able to offer a full scholarship for people in extreme need who have a are high impact leaders. But we really only do that once or twice per cohort. In general, we'll try to offer 50% off scholarship if there's a need. And again, as you know, they do receive a certificate, so this is a valuable thing that they can put on their resume. We're hoping to get a reciprocity agreement with schools in the US as well as in Kenya, so that students can receive some academic credit for this as well in the future. So you can pray for that process. Now, if you're ready to go with developing new leaders, go ahead and point your phone at this screen, and it'll take you to our application form, or you can just write down this WDAleadershipinstitute.com/apply, and that'll take you to the application form. After applying, you'll be contacted by either a manual or a cohort leader to interview you and talk about cohorts that are available, and then you'll make a payment. So don't make a payment first, apply first, and then you'll make a payment once you're plugged into your cohort. If you have your own cohort you're starting, please also ask your students to fill this out, but they can simply indicate the name of their cohort leader. So if Shannon is starting a cohort, they'll simply say Shannon under the cohort leader, and then Shannon will receive all of those application forms so that she can go through, do all of the vetting and interviewing. And again, they'll receive the PDF books. All right, so again, if you want more information, WDAleadershipinstitute.com is the link. Any questions? Let's take just a moment for any questions that you have about this process.